Hey, we're Saints. Father Chris here. Welcome to our Crucifixion live stream. Glad to have you with us. We are at the second day of Great and Holy Lent for those of the Orthodox Church. Actually, all Christians are in, if they celebrate Lent, are in a period of Lent where we are preparing for the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ our Lord. And yesterday we talked about fasting. And not how to fast or when to fast or what are the tools of fasting, but why do we fast? What's the point? And the conclusion we came to was that fasting gives us an opportunity to ask ourselves the question, am I going to live like Adam and seek my own will, or am I going to live like Jesus Christ and find life in every word that proceeds from the mouth of God? Obviously, hopefully the choice is that we follow Christ and not Adam. Today, we're going to talk about how to fast. What is the process? What are the typical rules, if you will, of fasting? And I'm going to speak from my own tradition, obviously, from the Orthodox Christian perspective and the way that we as Orthodox Christians fast. And then we're going to talk a little bit about maybe a new way of looking at how we abstain or how we replace some things with others. That being said, fasting. Let's talk about it like this. There is what is called the strict fast. You may hear that terminology, meaning like this is the most austere form of fasting. And it's basically a vegan lifestyle. And what that means is no flesh meats, right? So no steak and no chicken and no fish and no pork and turkey and all that kind of stuff. Next, it also includes no dairy. So obviously eggs and cheese and milk and that kind of stuff. Typically, alcohol is not permitted. There are some days where wine and fish and oil are permitted, but those are special feast days during Lent. But for the most part, no wine and no oil, right? Delicacies. Excuse me. Ultimately, and then here's another one that I would add to it, to the creamy, deliciously sugary things, right? All the whites. I call them the whites because, that white flour or that white sugar, the things that we love and crave so much because they're yummy. Like we probably should stay away from that stuff. Ultimately, the statement is anything that comes from the ground, from the earth, that is what we as Orthodox Christians can partake of, right? It's pretty accurate. Did I say it right? Did I miss anything? I'm sure there's other things. Do note, it's interesting, that shrimp and lobster are permitted, right? And it's a funny thing because they're like, how can we can't eat fish, but we can eat those. They're delicacies. Well, they are now. The point is that perhaps in the ancient world, those were the bottom dwellers on the sea or in the ocean. And so that was to them wasteful food. It wasn't ever even on the radar that anybody would eat that stuff. So they're like, whatever, we don't care about it, right? So you may have heard that out there before. So shrimp and lobster are permitted, as strange as that may seem. All of that to say, when we fast, as we saw yesterday, it's not just about what we eat. Nor is it about the boastfulness of, look at what I'm doing and how good I am. It is more important that we fast from sin. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, in just a few moments. It's also more important that we remember that choice that we talked about yesterday. Am I going to choose Adam or am I going to choose Christ as my guide in life? All right? So that's the idea of the strict fast. Now, having said that, we are putting this out there for everyone, but most importantly, our biggest focus demographic are those who have never fasted before, those who are catechumens in the Orthodox Church, or maybe an Orthodox Christian who is just for the very first time starting his or her fast. So with that being said, if you were my spiritual child, I would forbid you in year one from doing the strict fast. Wouldn't let you do it, right? No way. Absolutely not. That is said, I say that in order to push you that when you decide to fast, please don't take it upon yourself, your own hands, your own mind to decide this is how I'm going to fast this year. I would suggest, and I offer this for your consideration, that you seek out the guidance and the advice of your spiritual father, right? So in my parish, I by default, am the spiritual father of all my parishioners. I have other spiritual children who are not in our community here and throughout the globe, if you will, but my spiritual children all should come, and they mostly do, should come to me and say, Father, this year I'm thinking about this and this. And we talk through it, and we have I push back a little and pull forward a little, and we come up with a plan that is best suited for them. Because it is not simply about, look at me, what I've done, nor is it about being so austere that you fall off the wagon and never get back up, right? It is about tailoring a fast that is suitable for you, for where you are in your life today, right? So for example, the way I fast today is very different from the way I first fasted when I began many years ago. You understand? Like, I'm a different man. I'm an older man, right? Like, I'm a grumpier man. So my body's different. My discipline has changed, grown or shrunk, who knows, like it's very different. But I can say this, that throughout every Lent of all the 52 years of my life, I have, since whenever I started, not at one, but whatever number of years I've been fasting, each year I'm trying a little harder, going a little further, and I'm growing in my discipline towards being Christ-like in remembering that life comes from God. Does that make sense? Did I say that in somewhat clearly? All right, hopefully that's clear. Seek the guidance of your spiritual father. Don't try to do it by yourself. Don't say like, I am the Lord and master of my own life. I will choose. The point is, get some guidance, and whatever your spiritual father tells you, that's yours to deal with, right? It's not one of those, well, I don't like it. No, he's telling you a specific thing for a specific reason. All right. Next, when we're fasting, the goal, as we said yesterday, is to keep a little bit hungry, right? So that when we're hungry, we remember we have something outside of us to put into us to give life. And that's the whole point. Are you Christ who chose to disobey God's commands? Are you Adam? Sorry. Adam who chose to disobey God's commands, or Christ who chose to abide by them. One led to death, one led through death to life. So, the choice is pretty clear, but it's up for you to decide. All right, rambling. Let's come back. Focus. Next, fasting. Is it something that we become boastful about? Is it legalistic? Is it just about abstaining in the sense of, look at me, look at what I have done, I have stopped eating X or Y or Z. So for someone who refrains, let's just say, from meat, flesh meat, right? They're fasting from flesh meat during Lent. And you get 3 weeks into it and you're like, look at me, I've had no chicken, no steak, no pork, look at me, right? This is one of the temptations that many people who have already fasted know very much to be the case. Fasting is not about a legalistic, arrogant thing to say, look at me, what I have done. And it's also not about, look at what I have given up. I'm going to talk more about that towards the end of today's episode. In 1 Corinthians, St. Paul, when he's talking about living a life of the flesh or a life of the body, the spirit, he says in chapter, in chapter 6, all things, this is chapter 6, verse 12 of 1 Corinthians, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be enslaved by anything. And then he says, right, so you can see what he's saying, like, everything's okay. Nothing is off the table. He's referring a lot here to the Jewish, Mosaic law about things. But he's saying like that kind of legalism doesn't matter. But I'm not going to let myself become a slave to anything, right? And then what does he say is the first master? The stomach. In verse 13, food is meant for the stomach and the stomach for food. And God will destroy both one and the other. What I think he's telling us here, what I know he's telling us is, look, you have a stomach. It's a part of your anatomy, and you need to fill that stomach with nutrients so that the rest of the body can exist, can continue to live and thrive, right? If you don't feed that, you will die, right? That's just the reality of it. We all know that. We've seen starvation. Okay, but it cannot be that the stomach and the things we put in it become all about, become referential. Become our master, right? And it's funny that he wrote this, 2,000 years ago, how appropriate it is for 21st century North Americans in particular, right? We are enslaved to food. Think about how food has become for us, what it's become. It's like, you can drive in your car to the side of a building and someone will hand you a bag of food out of a window that you could actually eat in your car. You know what I mean? It's stunning. Like, if you really think about fast food and that kind of stuff. Everything for us is, about pertains to food and all the rest of it. And look, don't make fun of me or get mad at me, but we're all fat and sick, right? Especially in America, obesity, it's not on a rise, it's on an explosion, right? You can see it, just walk around and look, or you may be suffering and struggling with it yourself. Food and all that goes with it has become a reference point. Paul is saying, no, food is for your stomach so that you have the fuel, and your stomach is for the food so that it will dissolve the food, digest the food, so that it gives the nutrients to the body so you can live and do your business. But it's never about them. God will destroy them both. Rambling ends here to say this. The point of the fast is to, as we said yesterday, stay a little bit hungry, right? Just so when we're hungry, we realize that we cannot exist by ourselves. We need something. Let that something be God and His Word that gives us life, right? Otherwise, at that point now, we're learning not to focus on our stomach and filling it. And we're learning to focus not on our food and where to get it, right? Those things obviously matter, but they have now, once we get in right thinking, they have become no longer the reference. They have become a necessity that we have to abide by and eat, but they are not the reference. God becomes the reference. I hope all that made sense. God help me if it didn't. If it didn't, comment, tell me, Father Chris, what the hell are you talking about? We'll try again tomorrow. All right. Number 2, number 3, 4, 5, wherever we're at. Look, fasting has often, and it's evolved or devolved into a, what are you giving up? Right? I know that for those who are Orthodox Christians who talk within their families or in their parish communities or maybe just with people at large, you say, yeah, it's Lent. What did you give up this year? Right? Or what are you going to give up this year? Or you may even ask for help. What should I give up this year? And my response to that is always, all right, here's an interesting one. What if you, what if you decided to give up sinning? Like, wouldn't that be the thing to give up? Right. All right. So, of course, we should. And the idea when we abstain from food and fasting, it is to help us get in that right position. But I want us to think, I make that joke because I want us to turn, what if we stopped thinking about giving up something as much as replacement, right? So do your fast, talk to your spiritual father, eat the foods and the things that he asks you to eat. But what if you were to replace, let's say you have 2 hours a day of Netflix binging or more. What if you replace one of those 2 hours with, reading God's Word? What if you spend a lot of time doom scrolling, right? You know what I'm talking about, just going through your socials over and over and over. What if you, replace that with going to an extra church service this week? Maybe visit one of the churches nearby or your church and go to a service, say some prayers. What if you were to replace bad stuff with good stuff, right? So in some sense, it's not about abstaining so much as reorienting for the good stuff. There is a great saint in the Orthodox Church. He's one of my favorites. His name is St. John Chrysostom. And he has a saying that I will try to paraphrase as close as I can. In speaking about the fast, he says, what good does it do to refrain from, no, try it again. What good does it do to control what goes into your mouth if what comes out of your mouth is venom against your brother? All right, I think I got that right. Close. He needs to justify me, make me feel good. But you can see what he's saying. What's the big deal if you're like so rigid about what goes in, if you're spewing hate and gossip and slander and all the rest of this, evil against your brother? Chrysostom is saying, what goes in is important. What comes out is more so, right? So these are the things I want us to think about. Look, when you start your fast, don't do it on your own. Take the guidance of your spiritual father, right? Work through it together with him. He will help, make an assessment about where you are in your own journey and how to say, well, this level's too soft. This one's too high. Let's find something, maybe in the middle. Use that. Take advantage of that opportunity. Number 2, remember, it's not a legalistic thing about what I abstain from and how proud I am because I'm doing so good, right? And number 3 is remember that it's more important, if you replace some evil with good. I end here today. One of the things that all of us, probably every human being that ever was, maybe only the Lord Jesus is the only exception. And that is that when we are fasting, you will notice a moment. Usually I find it to be somewhere between the 2 and 3 week mark where you're doing really good. And you start to get prideful. Oh my gosh, look at me. Look how good I'm doing, right? Oh, I'm fasting. And then the brakes screech and we blow up our fast. We make a mistake. We eat something that we shouldn't have, either by deliberate decision or inadvertently. And then we find ourselves kind of in this, pit of despair. Oh no, all my good is gone, right? What do I do? Well, and we hear this and we think it. I know that I have. Well, I've blown my streak. I may as well just skip out on it and move forward and forget the fast. This, my brothers and sisters, is dangerous. In fact, I would say it like this. The real fast doesn't begin yesterday on Clean Monday. The real fast begins after your first fall. Are you willing to get back up and keep going forward? Are you willing to say, I did make a mistake, I blew the streak, but I am not going to let that hold me back from drawing ever closer to Christ, and keep going? Are you willing to say, I am not perfect, I realize that, only God is, and being perfect is a grace that he can bestow upon us, but I will be persistent, and I will fight, and I will scrap, and I will grind, and I will give every ounce of blood and sweat and tears that I have to continue on this journey towards his life-giving crucifixion and third day empty tomb. If you're willing to say, I'm in this for the long haul, I'm desiring to be a warrior saint, to live a crucifixional life, then brothers and sisters, if you fall, when you fall, immediately, not tomorrow, not even the next hour, immediately get back up and get back on the journey, right? It's a hard thing to do, but that's where fasting really is tested. That's when lambs become lions. Love you. We'll be back tomorrow. We don't know yet what we're going to talk about. It will do with fasting, one aspect of it. I don't know. Maybe I'll make Deacon Greg shine his wisdom upon us. Love you. See you tomorrow. Keep watching. You should visit us here, by the way. Check out our stuff. It's great stuff. Our app is fun and lovely. Love you. Be back tomorrow, as always. Keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.